Hey kiddo, welcome to the first episode of What Love Tastes Like. Today we're going to make chocolate chip cookies. These are my famous chocolate chip cookies, and we're going to need a few things. We do the Nestle semi-sweet regular chocolate chips. We do the minis and the chunks. We're also going to need some flour, eggs, baking soda, brown sugar, coconut flakes, regular granulated sugar, pecans. I prefer pieces, but today I could only find the chopped, so pieces are better. And then we're going to need some salted butter. You'll need a few tools. You'll need 2 bowls. I use a pretty big one for this because it's going to make a lot of cookies, and then one smaller one. You'll need a mixer, famous cookie spoon, a 1/2 cup measuring, a teaspoon, forgot vanilla also. I like to have scissors handy in case I can't get any of the packages open. You'll need a spatula for getting these off the cookie sheet. And of course, a cookie sheet. This happens to be the first cookie sheet I ever had from when I was 16, so it's an oldie. And also some salt. Okay, so to get started, we're going to measure the dry ingredients, and I sort of break the cooking rules a little bit because this is not how you're supposed to measure dry ingredients, but it's how I've always done it. So I'm going to show you. That way your cookies will turn out the way mine do. So instead of what you should do is sift this flour and then scoop it and level it with something flat. What I do is I scoop a heaping scoop like this, and then I shake it in the bag until it's level. And I always count out loud to make sure that I don't lose count and have to start over. So this is 1/2, 1, 1/2, 2, 1/2, 3, 1/2, 4, and 4 1/2. I think a good habit is to close each ingredient after you use it and put it away. That will help make sure that you don't forget anything. And it also helps you to end up with a clean space when you're done. Okay, so we need 4 1/2 cups of flour. Then we're going to add in our baking soda, which I am loosely following the recipe on the back of these with a few changes. And you can find the changes in my recipe in the What Love Tastes Like Cooks book. But for the sake of this, we're going to do 2 teaspoons of baking soda. Now the trick for this to measure is you scoop it, and then if you look inside the box, there's a little flat piece so that you can get a nice level spoonful. So we need 2 of these. 1, 2, remember counting those ingredients out loud. 2 teaspoons of that. We also need 2 teaspoons of salt. So we'll grab this. I like to measure over the trash can just to make sure that if it spills, we don't make a mess. Okay, so 2 teaspoons of salt. And we'll just kind of loosely stir that around a little bit to incorporate those things. And we'll set that aside. Now, in the big bowl, We're going to add our butter, and you want your butter to be room temperature. There's a couple of tricks if you're in a hurry and your butter's cold, but you need to get it to room temperature. One way is to pour water in, or boiling water into a glass tall enough to fit over the stick of butter. Then you would set this and set your cup over top of it, and in a very short period of time, it'll be room temperature. Or you can pop it in the microwave for a few seconds. I would only do about 10 seconds at a time and flip it so that it doesn't melt oddly on one side. Definitely not the preferred method, but it'll do in a pinch. So I'm adding 4 sticks of butter. I use salted butter. I believe the recipe on the package calls for unsalted butter, but I never do that. So we're going to add in the 4 sticks of butter, and then we're going to do 1.5 cups of each of the sugars. So again, I am just going to scoop in here like this, shake it till it's level. 1, well, that's a 1/2 cup. That's a full cup. There's 1.5. And then we'll do the brown sugar. One thing about measuring brown sugar is it actually has to be packed tightly in the measuring cup to get an accurate measurement. And this I actually do. I do it by just kind of putting it in there and pressing it from the outside of the bag to get a level scoop. Again, counting 1/2. One. And 1.5. We'll set that aside. Okay. So once you've got your ingredients in the bowl here, let's just take a quick peek here. So we're gonna add the vanilla. So vanilla, I measure with my heart. Again, not the proper way, but this is how I do it. So just kind of take a peek. I pour 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a sloppy pour. I tend to go over a little bit, and that's just the way I like it. So we'll add that in. And then we're going to go ahead and mix this until it's all well incorporated. I like to kind of smush the butter a little bit to get it started. So while we're mixing this in, I'll tell you a little bit about the cookbook. I thought it might be nice to have a living cookbook where you get to cook with me so that you'll always have this little memory, and you'll get to see some of the things that maybe I do differently than what might be the traditional cooking things, but it's all kind of part of what love tastes like, which is what it's all about. Cooking for me has always been a way of gathering people that I love together and doing something for them that makes them happy, and it gives me a lot of joy, and I hope that you feel the same way. So this cookbook, it's kind of full of recipes. A lot of them are recipes I've been working on my whole life. Or I guess maybe I think I started when I was around 16. And some of these are just recipes like, you know, cheesy potatoes, where who knows where that recipe actually came from, but everybody knows what cheesy potatoes are and we all eat them. So there'll be recipes like that in there. I decided to do it in a binder with clear page protectors instead of instead of having it printed professionally, because I thought it would be nice to be able to wipe off the page if you spill something or splash something, which I'm doing a little bit of that right now. Or you know, if you want to change it a little bit and make it your own, you can take it out of the slip cover and write on the recipe, or I'm also including a flash drive with all of the recipes, so you can just go in there and change them and reprint them if you prefer that, and a template so that you can add your own recipes. So these I'm, at least for now, putting all together by hand, and if you're one of my kids, you're getting a copy. You know, maybe we'll share this with others someday. But the great thing is you can add your own recipes, or, you know, maybe you have a friend or another family member who shared a recipe with you. And it kind of becomes your family cookbook, and it's easy to add to at any time. This butter was not exactly all the way to room temperature. It was still a little chilly, so this is taking maybe a little longer than normal, but we're almost there. So you can see it's getting pretty well incorporated. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up a little bit now. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. It's pretty well mixed. Well, that just doesn't want to sit that way. Okay. Next we'll add the eggs. It's always good to crack the eggs into a separate container first, just in case you end up with a dud somehow. I typically use jumbo eggs for any baked goods. I just find they come out a little bit better that way. So if you're following the recipe on the package, it would tell you to add the eggs one at a time. I don't do that. I just add them all at once. See, I've dropped a couple of shells. Also, one of the benefits of cracking those into a separate bowl first. I've never been great at cracking eggs. I'm going to quickly wash my hands because of germs, you know. Okay, so eggs are looking good. We'll go ahead and just add those in all at once. That was 4 eggs, and we'll go ahead and mix this until these are well incorporated. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We've got kind of a mushy, even consistency there. Now we're going to add the flour mixture a little bit at a time. Again, I'm not super careful with this, but one thing I can tell you is if you add just a little bit at a time and mush it around a little bit, you'll get less of that flour dusting up into the air and making a big mess. So we'll add that just a little bit at a time. Again, I'm not super patient with this process, so I add maybe just a little more than a little bit at a time. I don't know about you, but making cookies seems like one of those things where anytime I'm making them, it's usually because I want to make somebody happy. So cookies just have a happy thought for me. These cookies are everybody's favorite, I think. And you can change it up a little bit. I'm putting chocolate chips, pecans, and coconut, but maybe you're not a big fan of any kind of nut. You can, a lot of people do walnut. I like pecans a little bit better. I just like the flavor a little better. My daughter, Kimberly, she likes to put M&Ms in hers. So, you know, you can mix it up. Whatever you like the best. You can leave out the nuts too. It's fine if you don't put any nuts at all. So once you have all of this pretty well incorporated, let's see here. Just get the last of that off of those. Oh, I almost forgot. Let's put those back. Go ahead and mix the coconut in. You can do this by hand, and I do that sometimes, but mixing the coconut with the mixer is a lot easier. So we're just going to go ahead and put those back in. I usually use the bag of Baker's coconut. That's my preferred one, but you know, you can substitute if you can't find it, which is what happened this time. It's just a little bit softer. So we'll go ahead and mix that in. Again, you can do this by hand, but it's hard. It's hard to get the coconut well mixed in once the dough's kind of firm. So this will be a little bit easier or a little more difficult depending on how soft your butter was. That's kind of the deciding factor. So if you're doing this and yours is mixing a little bit easier than mine, that's fine. It's just maybe your butter was a little more to room temperature than mine was. Okay, so now we've got that in there. This is risky business what I'm doing here, so be careful if you decide to get the beaters on while you're pulling it out. You can make a big mess that way. Okay. Now comes the fun part. We're going to add all of the extra goodies. So we've got the pecans, the semi-sweet morsels, the chunks. I like chocolate overload in my cookies. This part you have to do by hand to get those all mixed in. I do find it's nearly impossible to stir this way. The easiest way is just to keep sliding the spoon down the sides of the bowl and sort of mushing it down. You'll see this looks like way too much chocolate, but I promise you there's no such thing as too much chocolate. So another thing about that cookbook, while I'm stirring here, I'm going to start adding pictures of cooking, not just the food, but, you know, if somebody comes over to cook something with me. In fact, if you want to come and make a video with me cooking something, we can do that. But let's take some pictures and we'll add them to the cookbook. That'll be fun. A fun little piece of history, too, for you and your family. Really good. We're almost there. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good here. One last little trick, and I have to grab a scooper. I'll be right back. I like to use a little tiny ice cream scooper. I would say this is circumference-wise about the size of a quarter, or diameter, I mean. And then I'll take these kind of flat around like that. And then if you just sort of click that a few times, you get a piece like this. I'll put these, you can put them on a cookie sheet or really whatever. And we'll put them in the freezer. This helps the cookies to cook more evenly and they stay fluffier. At least I think so. They always come out better when I do this. So we'll put them in there for just a little while before we bake them. And when it's time to bake these, once they're pretty frozen, which doesn't take too long. I mean, even 20 minutes or so will help, but if you can let them sit a little longer, if you have the time, even better. The great thing is this recipe here that we just did is going to make approximately 100 cookies, depending on the size of your scoop, maybe a little more or less. I think last time this made about 115 cookies. Once they're frozen, you can bag them up or put them in a container or however you like, and you can make them anytime. You have them all ready for you. Just keep them in the freezer. Just pop them out whenever you want. That way you can make, you know, if you only need 4 cookies, you can just make 4. When you go to bake them, preheat your oven to 375, and they're going to need between 9 and maybe 11 or 12 minutes, depending on, you know, every oven is a little bit different. And what you're looking for when they're done is the middle is not going to look done. The edges are going to just be starting to turn brown. So just barely. And I will restart this video when I take some out of the oven and we'll show you what that looks like. The trick is you need to leave them on the cookie sheet for 5 minutes. They'll continue to cook a little bit once you've pulled them out of the oven. Just let them sit for about 5 minutes, and then you can move them over to a baking rack. Or if you're not going to do that, if you just want to leave them on the cookie sheet until they're cooled, at least use a spatula and loosen them so they don't get all the way stuck to the cookie sheet. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and show you what's next. once the cookies come out of the oven. Okay, let's take a quick peek. As you can see, just the very tips are starting to get a little bit of color. That's good enough. Okay, I've popped them out of the oven. We're going to let them sit for 5 minutes and then we'll go ahead and take them off the pan. Okay guys, cookies are all cool. It's been 5 minutes. We're going to go ahead and just pop them loose. And from there you can let them cool, or you can move them to a cooling rack, but you can see these came out beautifully. And we'll go ahead and break one open for you to see. Yum. All right, till next time.